I think city just lays them out where they land. I don't think it's like a thoughtful process. I don't think so. Yeah, I've been married, so I change things up a bit.
The Pledge of Allegiance. Brian, you're up. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everyone, and right now we're going to do audience introductions. Do we? Cameron, you can. Oh, well, Cameron.
Cameron, senior.
Just a minute, Cam. What am I hearing? Oh, Brian, we're hearing the repeat. Remember, we heard that before. All right, Cameron, go ahead.
Cameron Bay, senior at Jericho High School.
It's coming from the speaker.
Barb, I think there's two of you.
Oh, no, that could be scary. That would be scary.
That's Camden.
Cameron?
Cameron, is that your phone charging?
It is.
It's coming from your phone.
Oh, yeah. Close that. Here. Two. Go ahead, Dave.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Dave Murphy. I am the Director of Adult Education, Region 9. I look forward to speaking to you later tonight. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Carol Gill, resident taxpayer.
What's last name?
Gill,
Carol. I'll do the other Carol.
Carol Roberts, select person, town of
Robert McClintock, Patty, or Budget Committee Canton.
Lori Woodhead, select, board member for the town of Dixfield.
Alicia Collins, Dixville Town Manager.
You don't hold me. Honestly.
Peter Stackett, Rick's Budget Committee, Carter.
Karen Thompson, Principal of Dearborn Center.
Oh, it's one principal at Dearborn member.
Jason Long, principal at Dearborn Middle School, director and coordinator for the district.
Devin, go for it. Introduce yourself. This is Deb Knowles, she's now at Exeter School kiddo.
Dean Knowles, mayor and president.
Ethan Knowles, Dearborn Middle School.
Abby Wood, Jericho Middle School.
Karen, I teach at the elementary school and the high school, and I am a resident in Peru as well.
Adrian Knowles, I got to Dearborn in Taylor School. August Miller, I'm a fifth grader at PES.
Can you repeat that? I couldn't hear you, hon.
Aubrey Sneller, in the fifth grade.
and Nicole Knowles, parent resident of Peru. Rebecca Fletcher, teacher at Deerfield High School. Beth McFarland, resident of the school. And their high school staff. I'm Katie Brumall, mobile language teacher here and the president of the Association of Teachers Association.
Bethany Negan Cooling, I am a Dixfield resident and Ericsville High School student.
I'm Sarah Thurston. I'm an athletic and student activities director at District School.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to go ahead and speak, ma'am, or do you want to introduce yourself, who you're here for?
I can do that.
Okay,
I'm Gail Bailey, I'm the selectman, vice chair.
thank you. Yes, thank you, everyone. And thanks for the town representatives coming, of course. Any town people. We have no adjustments to the agenda. Woo-hoo. All right, consideration of the minutes of the March 11th, 2025 board meeting. Could I have motion, please? Second. Okay, comments, questions, revisions. Give you a couple minutes to review. Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, at a break. Non-voting? 3. Okay. Public comment. This is the time the public can make a comment. If you came up to the podium, it'd be easier for the owl to pick up. That's what gets our audio now. And doing it very politely. Thank you.
Hello, welcome everyone to Deerfield High School. Always good to see you. I wish I didn't have to come speak tonight, but the cuts obviously to the budget are extra concerning, I think, to me this year. I wanted to speak tonight just about some things having to do with extracurricular activities, although I could talk a lot about the impact of a lot of the cuts. I know it's not easy decisions to make, and I don't envy you those choices for sure tonight. But I did want to speak about some things that are near and dear to my heart. When we think about our extracurricular activities, the thing that concerns me is that some of these more fringe activities often are kind of the low-hanging fruit. You know, nobody really shows up when we're talking about cuts to things like chess club. But if we were talking football here today, we'd probably have a mob scene, right? But it doesn't mean that that impacts kids any less who do those things. The one particular thing that I really did want to talk about tonight was girls' tennis. I was really concerned to see that cut on the list. I was told that that cut was proposed due to a lack of participation as well as the lack of a coach. Last season, my high schooler has played tennis with Kathy for the last 2 years, and they had over 20 girls participating. In fact, they had 26. They had so many that they had to break off for a JV team. They lost very few kids this year, only a couple of graduates and an exchange student. So the team's coming back strong with at least one middle schooler who I know is joining their group this year. Tennis is concerning to me, one, as a parent, because I have a student who's right now looking at colleges thinking this is my sport. It's literally favorite sport. And they're looking at schools where they can continue to play. And a disruption to that program obviously is a disruption, you know, not just to my child, but others. It was surprising because it's a really cheap sport to play. They don't pay for officials or referees. They get out there and do it themselves. If you haven't been to a match, one, I learned my first year as a tennis mom, you don't cheer. So note to selves, you don't clap loudly or yell. It's like a little clap if you ever do go. But we provide the kids equipment. I buy the rackets, the shoes. Other than that, I think the only thing they're showing up with from school is game balls, you know, so it's a very affordable sport. It's also a lifelong sport. That's something they can go play with a friend or bounce off a wall for the rest of their lives till they hit a point they might be picking up pickleball. You know, so I guess I just found it really, really, really shocking that that was on that list. This year's Juniors and seniors were the group during middle school who got hit during COVID. My kid got to do nothing. We sat home. And finally, we're back in a groove and we're doing things and we're socializing and we're out with friends and it's amazing. And the thought of cutting this team next year just really hurts my heart. I'll have a senior next year. There's not another sport in the spring they're gonna look to do. You know, you don't just switch from tennis into softball magically or last year of school. The team cost about $6,000. I think probably it equals out to be like a dime per taxpayer. I don't know. I don't run the numbers. I defer to Mary for that kind of math. But I'll gladly dig through my couch for some pocket change if 26 kids can keep doing the thing that they love to do. I really, really worry in a town where we don't have a lot of opportunity for our children when we talk about cutting extracurriculars. Because when the kids don't have something to do, there's nothing else out there for them to go and find. And what I don't want to find is my kid or anyone else's kid on the trails behind this high school, vaping, smoking pot. And you know that's what happens when kids don't have things to do. They find, unfortunately, sometimes things that aren't good for them to do in a small town. I grew up in a small town. I know how it goes. So I am here to just really respectfully request that you reconsider that cut for our girls tennis team. It's about $6,000 from the breakdown that I was sent. I think for 26 kids, we get a lot of return on investment for that sport. Thank you for your.
Thank you, Bethany. Anyone else? Anyone, nobody else? Communications?
So I had written no new communications, but right before I came in tonight, we all received an email from Elizabeth Bonham, who is a student at Derigo High School. She wanted me to send it forward to the board. Her concerns were about budget, obviously, and she talked about like how hard it is to lose anything. Because she was also on the tennis team, but she said she can understand that cut, but she's struggling with the cut of potentially upper level world language classes. So that was the gist of her email, asking you to think about like, what about upper level world language? And you all have it if you'd like to refer to it.
Is that it?
Yep.
Old business, Bruce?
Well, Region 9 met the special board meeting last Thursday to finalize our numbers. We actually finally got a final proposal so that we put out to the towns. We approved a secondary budget for the fiscal year 26 in the amount of $2,633,984. With all that said and done, what it meant was that it was going to be an increase for the RSU56 around 10,300 and change. So it is like everything that we've seen as we're going through our budget with RSU56. All the different increases that we don't have control over. And we're also in the same boat of waiting to find out what our health insurance is going to do, what our building insurance is going to do. But we looked at trying to trim everything down. When we first started out with the proposal of everything, RSU56 was going to see roughly a little over $40,000. And that's how much cuts we went through to all the programs. And I shouldn't say cuts to programs, but cuts to the lines in each program. Allowed us to maintain all the programs and keep everything going. We also approved the adult education budget, which Dave will be talking about a little bit, but I'll let you know that we approved their budget. It was $420,526. What that meant was basically it was their savings this year for RSU56. Now, it doesn't affect the school budget itself, but it does affect the taxpayers. And an RSU56 area is going to see roughly an $18,000 savings from adult education. Dave has done a wonderful job with the program, getting a lot of motivation, getting a lot of feedback and a lot of people and saving quite a few young ones. So it's really been a real asset to have him on board. When we went through the budgets, this is where we stand right now. We had a public hearing the following night, happened to be unfortunately a Friday night. I had different comments of who made the appointment or made the meeting for Friday night. It was me. Running the program, we were trying to figure out a night that would work, that we could get everything out and do everything. So we went on, put it in the newspapers. Our superintendent also got it out on the website somewhat, the board members. Unfortunately, I've been there for quite a few of the public hearings. As much as you'd like to think you'd have a good turnout, usually we end up with one or two directors, and we actually, with Julie was our only 56 member that came to us. Other than that, we had our adult ed director and our director for Region 9. So it was a very small turnout, but we were able to at least say we covered everything. We've got everything fiscally as responsible as we think we could have. Even though that we have the numbers proposed at this stage, it's like anything, we may be able to tweak things a little bit more as time goes on, but there's where we stand.
Bruce, quick question. So Friday was just an informational or was it the vote?
No, it was just information.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I'm guilty.
Yep,
I
nope.
Cooper flagged or that and I
The
didn't.
vote
know.
actually,
Sorry, that's bad.
the actual vote, I believe, is May 7th. Don't
Okay,
quote me on that,
thank
but I'll
you.
have to make sure, but
Yeah,
I believe that's what we're doing.
okay. Any questions for Bruce? Thank you for your work and Brian, because I know you're on the finance, because that's, because did we have more kids last year? We did. And I know we still have.
We have right now, we're looking at the last numbers, without everything said and done, we're almost 40 more students than this year, and this year was our record number. So right now, we're cruising at about 260 applicants.
That's great.
We've gotten to a point where we're expanded programs, and we're getting to a point where we're getting certain students that would say, well, what would be a second choice? Because unfortunately, you waited too long for your first choice.
So, all right, thank you. All right, is there new business in gifted and talent, Carolyn and Abby, and students are up?
Hello, this is Joanne asked Ms. Wood and I to come to the school board and tell you a little bit about what we do in gifted and talented. And so we brought some students to talk about that. So this is our table of contents and what we'll cover. We hope to be around 10 or 15 minutes. Deergo Elementary, we have 5 slides. Deergo Middle School has 9. Deergo High School has 1. We welcome any questions at the end. Right. This is Aubrey Sneller. She's a 5th grader at DES.
Some of the overall benefits of GT are for the most part, just the extra challenge and push our brains, and especially the logical thinking and the people's and the that we do. Another benefit is going to a different class in elementary school is a nice change, and it gives us an opportunity to work in smaller groups with a different teacher. We often work as a team and learn teamwork, and these collaboration skills will be used in middle school and high school and even further in future work environments. All of us students share common interests in learning. We push ourselves and one another to learn as much as we can. We learn about the world around us and how to respect it and consider it when making decisions. Another one, a big one, would be having a say in what we learn. At the beginning of the year, we discuss topics, skills, and Ms. Biot makes a plan from our list. Because of this, we have a natural interest in the content.
Next, this is Adrian Knowles. He's a 5th grader, also at DES, and he's going to do the next 2 slides.
So one thing we have done in GT is we've got to develop search and note-taking skills. We've kept our information organized, and we learned how to create and display data by making charts and graphs. We learned the importance of how to find credible sites and how to properly give credit with accurate citations. We've been able to work collaboratively and independently. We learn the importance of blending individual parts to make a whole. And when we did our STEM film, we worked on a stop motion, and when working on the stop motion, we learned how to make a story record and playing.
Awesome. So this was a project that they, a long-term research project where they came up with the questions, so it's inquiry-based research about migration. And then they worked really hard, put all their research together into a movie that was a blend of a Google slide deck and also stop motion animation to tell other parts of the research. And we went down to USM on a Saturday and they won first prize down there in Portland. Very cool. Okay. Adrian's gonna talk also about the engineering, design process and bridge building.
So the fourth grade students have been practicing their engineering and design process. And they've been making bridges. They've been working together to find a solution that is the most effective. And through this work, they've learned to be flexible and consider the incorporative peers' ideas. And students have developed perseverance and patience. If the first iteration fails, you build another using information from the failure.
Good job. Good job. And now Aubrey's gonna come back and talk a little bit about, we play some logic and academic games in GT.
Many of these challenging games teach perseverance, and so we can work past the point of frustration. They teach us to manage stress and the pressure of coming up with the answer while working under a time constraint. Through these games, we learn humility and we practice winning and losing with grace, although this part's still a work in progress. We apply math content to a game and experience the fun that comes with the challenges. We push the limits of the skills we have developed while playing these games. No matter if the game is linked with math, ELA, or science, we are developing fluency with our knowledge and skills.
This is just a list of, when I say that it's different every year, it truly is. This is just these are some of the things that we've done in the past. I do, with the third grade students, always focus on growth mindset and how the brain works to really get them to begin to understand that challenge is good. We've done a ton of computer coding with code.org. We do citizen science, signs of spring, which is called phenology. We go out and we measure and take data on what's going on as far as like when leaves are budding out, and we have little patches of strawberries we go check on, tree identification and data literacy. We also study books in depth. We do whole group and independent reading and learning and celebration. They all have a book in my classroom, books they're reading, and they review books, and we really talk a lot about reading. And then there's a whole slew of other things that I won't read, but just a bunch of things that we've done for Deergo Elementary School. Now I'm gonna hand it over to Abby for middle school.
So I work with GT students in the middle school. So they come to me from Caroline, which is great. And they have a great balance, not balance, but they've developed great knowledge about how they learn already. But there's still a lot of the same things she's worked on. We continue to work on persistence, being challenged, how to win nicely and lose. One of the things that we do at the middle school is accelerated classes. I currently have 13 students in GT enrichment classes, taking math. The goal usually is that by the end of 8th grade, they've completed 9th grade math. And so they're accelerated from sixth grade through eighth grade. Combined, moving at a pace that's appropriate for their own learning. So I have 13 students who are all in 13 different places. But it's what's appropriate for them. The pace is set for what they need. And then that leads to my eighth graders take high school classes. They come up to the high school for either Algebra 1 or Algebra 2. And then they take another class in conjunction with that because of how the schedule works. And this year we had students taking Spanish, we had a student take a music class, and currently taking a history class. So they have lots of different opportunities based on the schedule and the GT classes that they've taken prior to that. Logic and persistence is another key area that we work on. When things get tough, students shut down. And sometimes if they haven't been challenged a lot before, it's really hard when they do get challenged. And so we work a lot on persistence. We try to do fun projects to work on that. Sometimes they don't even realize they're working on their persistence skills, which is great. They're building a safe out of wood. It has 212 steps, which is mind-boggling to me. But it's great, and then they have something at the end to show for what they've really done. We also work building marble tracks in past years, stop motion videos, using nano blocks, which are really tiny Legos. And so they have to make stop motion video of it getting built. We've also solved murder mysteries and done daily brain teasers. Like the elementary school, it's different each year depending on what the kids need. So we adjusted for that. Western Maine Discovery Day is a program that's done through
Western Maine Education
Collaborative. Yes. And it's done 3rd through 6th graders participate, and they pick a topic. They have 4 different choices of tracks to do. This year, the 6th graders are participating in a book study about a book about Maine, and then summer research in outdoor careers. It all comes together, and they will spend a day at UMF with UT students from around Western Maine to learn about the topic that they've chosen. So it's an opportunity for them to pick a topic they're interested in, but also work with and meet other GT students from around Western Maine. I also work a lot with the other teachers in the building, making sure that they know about what each student's goals are, what they need to work on, what they need to be challenged. So it's not just me doing it all. I'm definitely coordinating a lot of it, but the classroom teachers also are making sure that the students are working on their goals throughout their academic day. And then, so the 8th graders take high school classes. They have the opportunity to meet with me to work on anything they need help with, whether it's the Spanish or the math. If they come back to the middle school and need help during their learning lab, I'm available to help them and check in with them quite frequently. I check in with the high school teachers quite frequently, make sure that they're succeeding and really getting the most out of what they're doing. And this is Ethan. Ethan has been working with me for 3 years now, and he's going to talk a little bit about what he gets out of GT and enrichment.
So I'm gonna say a lot of the stuff she just said basically, but we can work like at our own paces, like we can do what we need to do, which for me is faster than some of my other friends in my class. Instead of like the teacher having to repeat themselves, as long as they sit down and help me through it once, I can just figure it out from there. GT's given me an opportunity to challenge myself because in elementary school, I really wasn't challenged sometimes, and teachers would tell me I was distracted or off topic, and I often found myself bored. Since coming into the middle school and getting to join GT, I've found it much easier to like stay on task and like challenge myself. In the GT enrichment program, I've been taught how to set goals and create a plan to complete them. I can set realistic goals and a date that they need to get done by and do it. And this can help me for the rest of my life. I can take higher level classes. It not only lets me cover other areas of learning, but it also gives me opportunity to work on in different settings with like different teachers and different kinds of classes. I can be with big classes and small classes. And I don't need to travel with the same people all day, every day. I get to go and see new people.
Right, and the last slide is Dirigo High School. Looks a little different at the high school. Choosing the appropriate class for high school students is really important. You know, taking those advanced classes in their interest areas. So I do a lot of grade monitoring at the high school. I also teach 2 English classes at the high school, 2 AP classes. And I do informal and formal check-ins. I've emailed all my students just this week to talk to them about scheduling because scheduling is starting to happen at the high school. A few have replied. And we look at early college course support, like getting them, making sure they know of the early college courses they can take, talking with them about their post-secondary planning. I had a really good thing going before COVID. I had students collaborating 9 through 12 in my classroom. It was when I was still upstairs, so it was definitely a few years ago. And I really dream of getting that back somehow in our schedule where 9 through 12 is collaborating on these bigger projects like National History Day, podcast challenges, community service connections. I have hope, but it isn't happening currently. Currently, I'm just hoping they're helping them challenge themselves by their course selection. So that's our last slide. And if you have any questions for the students or Ms. Wood and I.
Tina, I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so I don't know a whole lot about gifted and talented. I was never a gifted and talented child. So at what age are these kids identified to come into the program? Because it kind of sounds like somebody started later and then others.
Yeah, 3rd grade is when when our district formally identifies students.
Okay.
So the identification process is based on teacher recommendation and data on their test scores. And then once they get
The standardized test scores.
Standardized test scores, yep, and teacher recommendation though. I always email all the teachers in 2nd and 3rd grade and I give them the markers of a gifted child and I say, if any of your students, because not all students perform well on standardized tests.
Right.
And then there's another test of those students who have been identified as like the top 10%. And that's another test that I administer. And then there's a selection committee where the data is completely blind. There are no names. It's just the data and that's how they're selected. And then that happens again in
5th grade.
Yeah, 3rd, 5th, and 8th.
So going off that, I mean, that's good. It almost sounds like you're doing child-led learning, so they're not following the same curriculum in elementary and middle school as the rest of the children. So they're doing their own thing. A lot of homeschoolers do it too with the child-led learning. What do you want to learn about this year? And how do we achieve those goals and meet those benchmarks?
Yeah, there's
So
some of that for sure.
similar, so they're not taking the same standardized test, or they are?
They are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're still in a regular classroom and I only get to work with them. My 5th graders, I work with them about 3 hours a week, 3.5. And it is usually during their RTI period that I get to work with them. I'm not sure.
In the middle school, they have a 45-minute period with me every day.
Okay,
And then, if they need extra support, there is that period at the end of the day that I can provide more support.
so it gives them special projects essentially.
That helps. For many of, not all of the GT students, but for many of the GT students in the middle school, it's a math class. It replaces their math class.
Oh, gotcha.
They're still meeting the same standards, just at a quicker pace.
Gotcha.
And at the elementary level, they're accountable for the same material as what the rest of their peers would be learning.
Yeah, right, so they often go back to their classroom and have work that they need to kind of get caught up on.
Bruce?
How many students do you have in the GT? Was that a loaded question?
In GT and enrichment
Yes.
is, I think it was 41 students total
Yes.
across the district.
Yeah, it's around 5%.
Yes.
Yep.
Other questions?
I just have a comment since I'm the old person here. Cause RGT went and transitioned and changed, and I'm so excited to see the, you know, the levels continuing. Cause used to be, you know, you just helped with the teacher, but you are doing the extra and getting them to lead and do things. And that really keeps them engaged and continuing to want to be challenged, and it's just great, and thank the kids for coming, because they summed it up.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank
Yes, thank you, both of you. Okay, Pam, you're the, here she goes again.
Just gonna run through the budget. And after I run through the budget, then we'll get to the budget workshop, so that's when we're gonna hope to get all of our information from the board and from the constituency of tonight. So some of this the board has seen before, but I'm gonna go through it because not everybody has seen it. So when we make a budget, the administrative team starts with thinking about, like, how does this budget support our strategic plan? We have one in place, how does it support it? Then we look at what's best for our students, and how do we support our current employees, and then how do we respond to our community concerns? So there are some positives this year in this budget. The state intends to remain at 55% of EPS cost covered. And if you haven't heard, I've been waiting patiently with high expectations that they did pass the budget at the state level. So we expect that the preliminary ED 279, which is our general purpose aid from the state, will come in as scheduled. And we do have a significant increase in our preliminary ED 279. We have an increase of state funding of over $830,000. So when you see our increase, but then some of our towns have a decrease, that's why, because there'll be more state funding coming in. We have our 277,500 for balance forward. That's what we usually use every year when we start our budget. So it's important for us to make sure we have that each year out. If not, then we would be starting in that hole. And then I've said this a few times that we've locked in heating fuel and diesel and all of that stuff. And this time I put an asterisk beside it, because since we last met, we got a letter from our company saying that because the tariffs are now on it, that we have to increase it by 10%. So locked in, pseudo locked in. Wonderful. Oh, got the unknowns. So we do have some unknowns, which I think are concerning when you go into the budget season. We do have 2 contracts that are currently being negotiated. So those contracts would include salaries, benefits, and one of them includes all of our stipends. So those are all unknowns still. We're looking at a probable health insurance increase. It's budgeted right now in our budget at 12%. Really concerned that that might not be enough. And we also are looking at a probable property and casualty insurance increase. We also put in 12%. And then, as you know, from the news every night, we are concerned about our federal funding. So that's Title I and local entitlement. So that's over $500,000 for us. So insurance, when we got our maximum notice, the maximum could be as much as 17.89%. That's pretty much how I felt when I read it. I shared last time that I was not in the office. I was in the high school at the time, and Mary called over to make sure I was okay, not locked in a bathroom somewhere. I had like a big major meltdown. But we will know April 11th what our specific increase is for this district. So I'm gonna go forward with the budget, but remember, these are rough numbers because there are a lot of things that we don't know yet. So if we were going to maintain what we have right now in the district, basically, it would take an 8.81% budget to budget increase. 4.06% is payrolls and benefits, and special ed is going up about 2.6%. as I've shared in the past, that's largely in part because students move in, they require other district services because of individual needs. So that's the cost of that out of district services as well as busing to get them back and forth. So that's 6.12% of the budget that we really don't have any control of when we go into it. At this point, the administrative team already made cuts putting our budget together. For example, before we even came to the board, we reduced an ed tech at the middle school for special ed, like we already did some looking at, but other than those kind of cuts, we would maintain everything else we had in the budget at 8.18. The board, when we came before, looked at 6.78, that's why it's in gray. They looked at 5%, also in gray, that's where they wanted us to go at first. They landed last time at 6.12% or 14%, somewhere in there. I didn't recalculate 6.14, it's pretty close to the 6%. And at a 6% budget to budget increase, Canton would have a decrease of just over 2%. Carthage would have a decrease of 3%. Dixfield would have an increase of 3%, and Peru would have about a half a point of increase. It was important for the board to know, like, what does that mean in terms of taxpayers themselves? So I'm just gonna focus on the 6% increase because that's where we currently are, just over 6%. For Canton, that would mean you would have a decrease of $32 for every $100,000 on your house. Carthage would have a decrease of $36.13, again, on every 100,000. Dixfield would have an increase of 38, and Peru, we were told that none of these would impact their taxes. I want to talk about Dixfield for just a minute. The reason Dixfield is up is because their evaluations. The state does a 3-year evaluation, and what they value Dixfield at this year was substantially more than what they were valued at last year on the 3-year average.
Wasn't our evaluation higher last year too?
It's a 3-year average.
3-year average, okay.
So
Yeah.
when a year drops off, it kind of fluctuates.
So that's the 3rd year, is it, Mary, or not? Not sure. 2nd, okay.
So 2 weeks ago when we met, the school board directed us to tentatively go with that 6.14 after looking at what that was for cuts. So that's what we are sitting at tonight, but obviously open to input from our constituents. To get to that 6.14% budget to budget increase, we needed to cut $284,000. I always feel like I should say this, when the administrative team is charged with making cuts, and the board knows it as well, they are trying to be fiscally responsible, but it is a tug of war between what we have for a strategic plan, trying to strive for excellence, and budget requiring cuts in the budget. And I really feel like I should say this because I think sometimes it goes unnoticed that when we make cuts at the administrative team, it is not a game chance. Like, we do not put everything we have up on a board and throw darts at it and see what shows up. It is a very thoughtful and very time-consuming proposition for the administrative team to go through that. I think it's important to know because the administrative team works really hard at looking at the entire district and the entire budget, and then other people have, and I don't want to call it myopic because that sounds a bit negative, but other people have like slices of the budget they're thinking of because they're personally involved in that piece, or there's reasons why they're thinking about small pieces of the budget. The administrative team literally looks at everything and then prioritizes from there. So these are the cuts that we made. Again, we started at 8.18%. We cut a special ed tech at the high school. We cut out a hot water booster at the high school. We reduced social work at the elementary, at the middle school. We cut out $2,300 from the DES tech related software. We reduced the classroom teacher at the elementary school. We reduced guidance software maintenance by $9,000. We reduced, we took away all of Charlie's contracted services for social work. At the elementary school, we reduced Derigo High School's girls and boys tennis. We took out ecology club at the high school, speech and debate at the middle school. We reduced district curriculum materials by $2,000. We reduced a math interventionist at the middle school. We reduced high school field trips by over $6,300. We took out the PFAS filter at Jericho Elementary School, hoping that possibly we can buy one at the end of this year, if Ben Kenny's budget is in good shape, so that we don't get caught shorthanded. We reduced Jericho High School supplies and equipment by $4,000. We reduced equipment at the high school, and we reduced curriculum work weeks by $8,000. Curriculum work wage is what we use with teachers when we do on different curriculum, then we bring them in and they get the work. We found out that Region 9 is projected to be an increase of $10,394.50. You have two options as a board and as a community on how you want to go at that. We can either option 1, increase the budget to 6.21% to cover that additional 0.07%. Or we can make additional cuts. We would cut the special education teacher by $3,180. And we would cut the hot water maker at Jericho Middle School by $7,900. This is our timeline with our budget. We're hoping to have the full tentative budget to the board on April 8th. On April 29th, we added a special board meeting. The board will vote on that budget. And then May 31st, they'll sign the warrants. The 27th, our budget hearing validation meeting right here at the high school. And on June 10th, our 4 towns will vote. And in between all of that, every person in our 4 towns will receive a newsletter in their mailboxes on what to do with this budget. So that everybody's aware of what it is and where to vote and where to go. So tonight, we're looking for direction from our board and our constituents. That's how I feel with this budget. I never feel this way with this budget, like, it just feels like so many unknowns, I just like, I don't really know which way to go some days. And then that's what leads us to is this budget workshop to get input from everybody. And I'm gonna leave that up there for a bit, so if people are not here or want to contact me later, I'm always open to hearing from anybody in our communities or in our schools about the budget.
I do have a couple questions. First, you said, they told us because of the tariffs, they're going up 10%. Does that give us the right to renegotiate with others or be locked in, or that would be the best bet?
I mean, it's still gonna be the best bet.
Okay. That's what I figured, because it was,
Still gonna be the best. It's at that point in my mind until the neighbor contract.
yeah.
Sometimes it's not okay to just like shoot yourself in the foot.
So did you put the increases? Did you adjust?
So Mary has been adjusting as we go.
Okay. And the other thing was, you said with the Region 9, which 10,000, what would be if we just did?
You would be adding 0.07% to the budget.
So that would be
So you
total
would be at a 6.21% budget to budget increase.
0.2. Okay. Thank you. That's all my clarity. I need.
Don't we have, I think on one of your slides, at the very first one, wasn't the hot water boiler?
Yeah, Gina's gonna take that out, but it was
Okay.
still in this budget, so we can
Right,
remove it.
so that gives us an extra almost $6,000.
Nope. It doesn't, because we would still, it's in the budget, so we still have to take it out. You just gave her permission to do it this year with her current money, but it's in this budget, so we still had to take it out.
Okay.
So it doesn't give us an extra 6,000 to play with.
Okay.
Mary's not incorrect at me, so I'm not over there, or she would kick me if I said something wrong.
So I read the minutes from last year because I wasn't here. I wasn't
Yeah.
doing well. Are we still shopping around for other options for health insurance? And I mean, are we shopping the marketplaces to get the best deal?
So we've
for
been
our-
directed to go out to bid next year for insurances. I'm gonna repeat again that there are health insurances. Some of them we cannot shop for because it's listed in our collective bargaining agreements
Right.
that it's Anthem Blue Cross.
Okay,
But we will go out, we were directed to go out next year. I've already let our property insurance know that that's our plan for next year. Emailed them and said we'd be shopping around.
okay,
But that won't go into effect until 26, 27.
Right.
right.
Because there's a notice period, right, that we have to give them X amount of notice that we're planning to go
Correct.
back out to bid.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions before we just open up? I'm just gonna go back to these seats so I can see all of them. Back to it.
So, just so I clarify, because I was trying to get, with the 6, well, if we do 6.21 or 6. What I saw for staff was a math teacher,
Math
math
interventionist.
interventionist, a DES teacher.
Yep,
Did I miss any others?
yep, that's an ed tech, special ed.
Yeah,
Would you put it back up?
It's up.
You got it up.
okay, because I was trying to get just the, which one am I looking at?
All of these.
Oh,
they
wait,
got.
oh, that's right.
So you have a special ed tech at the high school, a classroom teacher at the middle school, you have. I'm sorry, at the elementary school, Jason, don't panic, I didn't take it from you. And then you have contracted service for social work at the elementary school. And then you have the math interventionists at the middle school.
Okay,
And I said last time that with the loss of the math interventionist, this requires the high school and the middle school to share a position. And after looking at all the possible positions that could be shared, the administrative team was recommending that we shared world language between the two. Could that be zoomed in so we can see it back here? That's a Brian question, I think he's responding.
he's trying, I think he's trying.
Get further with you.
Ryan, bam.
That's all right, Brian.
So I really would love to hear from townspeople and the select boards from the towns to see where you feel like this is falling.
Don't think it all.
You just come up to the podium so they all can hear, or, well, they're still reading. Now, like you said, you were changing world language, and the board has gotten a lot of emails and things. One was about, you know, why are we sending Power School? And I knew Brian's doing, but the response was, we have a new secretary who needs to be trained,
And we have a new guidance.
not guidance. And the important,
That can be done online?
So I probably could defer to Brian, but
Okay.
I've had pretty deep conversations around this myself.
all right, so Brian, do you want to do it? or-
Sure. So, there is a remote option. The problem with the remote option, it's not like a college course that you might take one, you know, for 3 hours, once a week. You know, for a certain period of time.
Right,
You're on the computer for between 8 and 9 hours a day, 4 or 5 days in a row.
okay,
In class, pretty much the entire time.
okay,
Versus doing it in person, I think the actual class time is around the 26-hour mark, something like that. The benefits doing it in person, you have full access to their instructors, basically 24 hours a day when you're there. You can meet with them, you sign up for a time, you can meet with all the instructors. You
so
have
how
full
many
access
days
to
are
their-
you there?
We're there for 4 days.
4 days,
On site is 4 days,
okay, so 6
Yep.
hours a day of schooling essentially.
roughly, yep. And like I said, beyond that, 6 hours of in-class time, there's open labs that you can walk into anytime after hours. So beyond the instruction day, they have a couple, conference rooms that are set up just for, you know, you walk into a certain one and say, hey, in my district, I'm trying to do, I don't know, say a new report card, or this report that I built doesn't work
And where does
correctly.
this happen?
It varies. We try to do East Coast if we can. I've been 8 times over since I've worked here, and we've only had to go West Coast once.
Okay, so we're paying for airfare, meals and hotel for 4 nights.
Hotel, yes. Meals, the only thing we pay is dinner because lunch and breakfast is included.
Okay,
We pay airfare if it's somewhere other than driving distance.
Okay.
Luckily for us, they seem to like Boston lately.
okay,
Almost every other year since I've done it has been in Boston. I believe 4 out of the 8 times have been in Boston. This year is in DC, next year is back in Boston again. So we try to, when it's in Boston or the years, we try to send more than one person, just
so
because
this year it'll be in DC,
this year is in DC, correct?
so we would need to fly.
Correct. This year comes out of, and the other thing we do is we split, because of it happening during the summer. Part of the cost comes out of one budget, part of it comes out of the next budget.
Okay, so you're saying every year we're sending 2 people, is it 2 different people or the same people going back and forth every year?
It depends on the year. I go every year. The thing with our district setup is, like RSU10 and a lot of other districts around us, they have a dedicated data person. So one person goes every year. The problem with our district is we don't have somebody dedicated to run Power School all the time. So it's Power School is run in 56 by 3 different people primarily. Myself, Jason is the curriculum person who handles a lot of the gradebook stuff, and his secretary, Lisa, is pretty much my backup person on everything. So normally I would go every year as the head data person, and then we filter in others as needed, whether it's like Pam mentioned, we have a new guidance counselor at the high school. She's the lead on all our scheduling. So at some point, she definitely needs to get there to take in the scheduling stuff. That right now we're working with another district for them to kind of help us through the scheduling piece of it. And then it's, our new elementary school secretary also hasn't been trained yet.
Jason, you had your hand up, anything to add or?
Brian just addressed it. Many districts, even districts around us, may only send one person, but that's because that person is dedicated, that's their full-time job. So we have a bunch of people, primarily those two, but also others, who I think they need that training because there is no dedicated person who is the expert on
So we
everything
need-
branded. So
Right.
it actually saves us money in the long run to do it this way.
And I think the other piece that really sells the in-person is, I mean, one of the big things that those of us that have gone enjoy is whether it's that time we might be sitting at the lunch table with people from across the country, the interactions. I mean, the last year, Jason picked up the knowledge on AI and Magic School, which we brought back to the district and really moved things forward in terms of what we're doing with students and artificial intelligence. So I think it's not always about just that main piece, but looking at the broader picture of what else we're getting when we're there.
Bethany?
I think as a parent, when we're looking at direct cuts to things like world language for students, clubs, activities, things that directly impact kids day to day, it's a really hard pill to swallow. To say, hey, this is a tough year, we might need to tighten up. You might need to do this remotely. Instead of it costing, I'm kind of ballparking in my head knowing it's about 3,000 a person to go, then hotel. I thought this year online it said Anaheim, California, so if we're flying people that far, that's expensive. Even if it's DC, airfare is expensive. As a parent, it's really hard pill to swallow saying, we're gonna cut these things from your kids so we don't have people having to sit on a computer. You know, in-person learning, I'm an educator, I know the value of it. But I think in tight budget times, that's a really hard pill to swallow. When you're telling kids, hey, not having 4 years of world language may impact your college prospects, but sorry, some folks want to travel for this training. As a former educator, it's a hard pill to swallow because I worked in Power School. I got this much training from anyone actually trained to do it and had to keep track of kids' grades. And I had to go with the teacher up the hall to ask what they knew about what they knew and what they knew. I want people to be experts. I want them to know how to do their jobs. I want those things for them. In a tight budget time, that just might not be the year to take the more expensive option. It's just my personal opinion.
Carol, can you see that now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I just want to clarify that we are not saying we don't want kids to have 4 years of Spanish. We feel like, again, Kaylin and Brenna looked at numbers again today. And we feel like with the periods that we can have world language at the high school, that we can still offer the semester Spanish 1, 2, and 3. And currently, we would only have one student going into Spanish 5 if that student continued in Spanish 5, and we would figure out a way to make that happen. There's only 6 kids that are looking to be in Spanish 3, so potentially, you know, having that kid, I know Heidi, well, say Heidi, our world language teacher
But
has done independent studies with current students that are in Spanish 4 and 5. So if they did an independent study but came in with those 6 Spanish 3 kids, they could potentially still make that work. So we're not looking to not allow our kids to have Spanish as they need to in order to whatever college they need to. So just to clarify that.
Carol, go ahead. I was gonna ask the,
I'm kind of coming at this from 2 different sides. As a select person and an advocate, I'm clearly concerned about any increases to our residents. We have a lot of elderly in town. You go to Walmart, you can get $4 for a loaf of bread, $5.50 for a dozen eggs, $5 to $6 for a box of cereals. They're struggling as it is. I don't know how they're gonna handle any more decreases in the school budget. I realize there are costs that we can't ignore. But that's my point from the select person side.
So I just want to clarify, Canton would see a decrease.
I know, but we're lucky on that front. Not all 4 towns are.
No.
So we've had years where we've been nailed hard because of the windmills. We know that here. But the other side of it is being a substitute at the elementary school. I cannot stress enough how I wish all of you board members would spend a week in the 3 school buildings, not in the office, walk the halls, hear what these teachers are dealing with kids' behaviors and et cetera. To remove the social work part from Darrell Elementary, not good. It's needed beyond belief. I don't want to see any cuts to, staff members, but that one is a particular concern to me.
Yeah,
It's on that.
I'll clarify on that. So we would still have our full-time social worker who works for us at Darrell Elementary School. What we wouldn't have is the contracted service social work that we used to get through Community Concepts to come in for 3 days a week. And I'm gonna defer to Charlie on this, but my understanding was Community Concepts was unable to fill that position this year. So we haven't actually had anybody that's been able to come in. So we still would have our social worker, our current social worker that's full-time at the elementary school.
So we have a guidance counselor at the elementary school, and then, kids who have it in the IEP, we'll have one day where a social worker from outside comes, as part of it, especially a budget, to work with kids who have it. Pam was talking about, 2 years ago, we had, a social worker coming into the school from, Oxford County Mental Health. We then hired her to be our guidance counselor, and then this year they weren't able to find, anybody in that position, so. That's why and it's not likely that we would, find somebody next year either, so that's why that was one of the things that was. Okay, just because, not because there's any sense that it's not needed, certainly could use it, but there's more of a sense of. Hey, it's a strong probability that we wouldn't be able to find.
That makes more sense. But I implore all of you to spend a week in the schools.
Thank you, Kara. Anyone else in from the towns?
If I may, Peter from Carthage.
Yep.
Pam, can you circle back on something, please? The PFAS, is that a mandated item that we need to take care of?
So we do have a PFAS process at the Darrell Elementary School, and Kenny and Mary and I sat down and we believe that Kenny's going to have hopefully money left over from this year that we can buy that filter. So we felt like we could take it out of next year's budget. So we would still be in compliance, but it just makes me a little nervous because we're gonna be a little tighter this year than we normally have in the past with our budgets. But we feel like we can make that happen.
But it is a mandated thing.
It is
Yes.
mandated. It doesn't have to be changed when it needs to be changed.
What does that do?
So it's a whole system because they have a well at Jericho Elementary School, not on town water. We would test it if needed to do this system in order to make sure we don't have PFAS in our water system for our students.
Okay.
When we talked about the state town assessment formula, can you just explain to me? You got a rolling, it's a 3-year average, it's a rolling average, so it's 21, 22, and then it goes 21, 22, 23.
It's always behind by, I think it's a year or 2 years that it's always behind. 2 years, Carl's saying 2 years. So it's always, and I want to be clear, it's a 3-year average, which is 2 years behind, or your current year assessment, whichever is less. Like they don't, if you got reevaluated and you were worth significantly less, then you take that 1 year. But they always look at 3 years over time if it's pretty steady. or, you know, have ups and downs, if it goes down.
Evaluations have gone down, so that's.
No evaluations have gone down, but
Those numbers that are sent to you, does that also go to our town halls as well?
so that's right from our general purpose aid formula, so I don't know that you would see that, but we certainly could give you a copy, and you can go right online and just put in ED 279 for Maine, and you can go right down and scroll to RSU56 and bring it right up, and it will show you what Carthage, Canton, Peru, and Dixfield have for their averages. But we can get it to you too if you prefer.
I didn't know that you had sent out like.
Oh, do you send it to the town?
I don't send out the ED 279, and that's where that piece of information is from. ED 279. Oh, I think Mr. Long's gonna come help you find it.
One other.
Yeah.
The funding from the state and funding from the feds. 55% of the state funds for education and maybe 55%. That's in this budget that they just passed, correct?
Correct.
No. That is 800 and something.
No, our increase was 838,000 this year. Our total from that, Mary's gonna give it to us, because she's got the ED 279 in front of her. Our total from the state is $8,516,329.13 this coming year. But it's an increase of 838,000, somewhere around there.
So that is in stone, we're getting that.
So I don't think anything's really in stone
No,
right now,
it is.
but we got a notice from the department saying that they passed the budget and they expect that our preliminary ED 279 will stand. Which is more than I've had up until this moment, so I'm going with that.
Now, next one, that should be interesting. How much do we get, federal aid, and that's for different programs, correct?
Yep, so we get it through two different programs. We get it through Title I, and I didn't bring my sticky note over with me. We get it for Title I funds, and that is right around 500,000. And then we get funds for, it's IDEA, so it's individuals with special needs. And that's, I think, right around 250,000. So we get about $750,000 through title federal funds.
So if that's gonna be withheld, that's gonna impact our budget.
If that's gonna be withheld, that's going to impact, everything. Yeah, will be.
Funds are used for.
So, but so Title I in itself, we have, 2 teachers and 7 ed techs paid the Title I funds, so all of those people would be looking at riffing, so reduction in force, so that would be a jigsaw puzzle. And then we have a lot of, things in our special ed money, like we pay our site provider from that, and we have to, you know, assess kids if they have an IEP coming up, so we would have to find ways to figure that out into our regular budget. It will be a mess. It keeps me awake at night. I'm trying to not busy like it's gonna be okay. We're gonna get our federal funds, but there's no guarantees.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but we probably should count on doing that temporarily, I hope temporarily. What contingency plan does the board have to? We'll have to get together and decide.
Yeah, so-
Do we get the money from the towns temporarily, or how do we have money?
I would not recommend that we spend funds thinking we might get them at some point. I would say if they do not come in, we're looking at a huge reduction in force in terms of Title I, and we would be looking at what's coming out of our budget, which would most likely result in a reduction in positions in order to cover what we need in special ed.
You reduce the instructors, how's that gonna affect the students? What's gonna happen?
So it will not be good because all of the Title I funds go towards interventions for students, so they work directly with students. It will not be a good situation if that's what we have to do. It will directly impact students in a very negative way.
I have a question, when, like for next year, when would that money usually come in?
So we would know well, actually, we would know by now typically what we're getting, and we have not gotten that. I've had two communications in the last 2 weeks. One said that we anticipate we'll have federal funding as has been historically funded. And then the next sentence said, however, this is an ever-changing landscape, so that didn't help me much. And then this week, we got a thing saying that our funds would be good through the end of September 2025, which means this year's funds are good. But it didn't say anything about like where next year's would be. But they said we likely would get them, but would probably be looking at a decrease. So I really don't have, I wish I had answers. I feel like I'm supposed to have answers, but I simply do not have them at this time.
My thought is, if that happens, that is gonna be devastating, not just to us, to the whole country on special education and Title I. And they mandate for us to do these things. So if mandated is going to be, which they don't cover at all, but if they're gonna do that, then it's gonna be a crisis budget. It's gonna be something we've never dealt with before. I mean, we've had the state not have budgets for a long period of times, but the feds, you know, that is a very important piece of what they cover is for special education in Title I. So we just it's sad to say this, like, they're gonna duke it out, and even though I see, well, we're gonna change it over to here, and we're gonna change it into this department. Well, who's gonna know what to run? So.
Peter, my memory was pretty good, so for Title I, we get 513,102, and for a special ed, we get 258,599.
We currently have enough funds to run through the end of the school year.
Yes.
When do you get those funds typically? When is this, the feds and these funds, are they on monthly?
So we have to draw them down, so we expend them, and then Mary draws them down from the Department of Education. So they don't send us like one big check. When you spend it, you draw it down.
They basically have an amount that they say, you have this amount in the pot, and then you pull it out of it through the year as you need it.
Yeah.
So we can get.
Absolutely. I'm not concerned about getting through this school year unless all of a sudden things stop simply so they don't have money anymore, but that would be bad. I have not heard that, so I haven't spent that time worrying about that.
Thank you for your questions. Liz?
I got a question. How do you, as a team, decide which positions, like the math interventions, how do you come up with those where math is such an important? We're in the hole, math wise. So I'm just curious how you come up with that, because it seems like there are some other positions maybe that aren't mandatory for graduation, or like JFG or something like that. So how do you juggle this?
Yep, so the administrative team, when we have to go into reduction in budget, we literally look at everything. And I want to address JMG because that's come up a couple of times. So two parts with JMG. One, we don't own JMG. We pay 27,000 of the total cost of JMG, which is basically a third, and JMG pays the rest of it. So it's a pretty cost-effective program for RSU56. And I've also been asked about, like, why didn't I send JMG to the middle school? JMG, a few years ago, told us that they were pulling out of the middle school and focusing on the high school because they have enough of a caseload at the high school. And again, I don't direct JMG. It's a contracted thing with us. So that's why you would see, I mean, JMG, I talked to the JMG supervisors and I told them that this is a possibility, depending on how deep we have to go, that we would be able to come up with our 27,500 for JMD. But if we can keep it in, it's a pretty good thing for what we pay.
So I have a question. So say we go with, we stick with what we picked. And we increase a little so that we can cover our Region 9. And we put that to the voters and they shoot it down. What do we do then?
Then we come back when we make budget cuts. But I think the key is understanding that even with a 6.21% increase, 2 out of our 4 towns will have a decrease. 1 town, we were told from Peru that it didn't matter what our budget came in, that it was not gonna impact taxes.
Sound right? Does that sound right?
Okay.
And then the 1 town in Dixfield, like, again, the biggest issue is that their evaluation of their 3-year evaluation went up significantly, so they would see an increase in Dixfield.
So I have a question, you may or may not answer, or have the answer for this, but. We were supposed to have reevaluations this last year with Berkeley Pond and stuff. Is that going to happen this next fiscal year?
That's supposed to start July 1st.
Okay, okay, so that may completely change what we would be paying in also?
It probably wouldn't affect this until 2 years out.
2 years.
Because they're about a 2 year
That
back.
would be averaging this 3 year thing.
Originally 3 year and they're always 2 years. Right now, they're looking at it.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Is there any other feedback from any of the towns?
Dixfield, because I'm Dixfield too.
Oh, Brian's over there from Canton.
Oh,
He's
Dixfield.
changed.
Oh, wait a minute. He's just like there,
Yeah, so I'll step away from the table for a few minutes, and I'll talk to you guys as chair of the board from Canton. I think as a board, we have a few things that we're weighing this year in terms of our own budget. Like you, we're dealing with increases in costs on everything. But I think the key for me, you know, I'm a parent, I'm a board member, I'm an employee, but looking at what we can offer the kids. Not just what we offer the kids from 7:30 to 2:30 or time you call it school day. But I think outside of that, it's been brought up a couple times, I know a lot of people have talked about, well, let's cut all sports, you know, that's outside, it doesn't affect kids directly. I don't agree with that at all. I think our extracurricular opportunities, our sports teams, if we can keep some of them, you know, if we have to cut some, we have to cut some, but the more we keep, the more opportunities there are for kids. With everything that's going on outside with, you know, whether it's drugs, kids just getting into trouble. I think the best thing we can do is keep them occupied, keep their minds going, and offer them what we can. I think it's hard to look at going deeper than you guys already have. At that point, it gets to, can we even offer them classes during the day? I think looking at a few of our towns, Canton being one of them, the payment actually going down for the first time in a long time. We've, like Carol mentioned, we've been on the windmill rise for a couple of years and having our payments increase by hefty numbers. We've been able to offset that a little bit through some of our town funds. But I think for us going forward, kids are important. We've had a lot of kids move into the town of Canton in the last 2 years, so we want to be able to offer them everything we can, whether it's on our end of things through our rec committee or through our schools, trying to offer everything we can. So we just would like you guys to do what you can, keep supporting kids, and we'll do what we can on our end to help offset it.
I think most of us can agree that we'd rather not cut anything, but the budget's just so difficult. It's so difficult for towns right now too, so. I'm sure I'm not the only.
I know that, right? I don't want to put it, I don't know who would like to speak for Dixville. I know my taxes went up a couple hundred last year. But I also know, and you guys can speak, you know, Dixfield is trying not catch up, but trying to fix things that I'm not gonna begrudge anybody in the past that hasn't been done, you know, there's things. So it's kind of a balancing act, because Dixfield does support students, has for as long as I've been here. So does anybody want to speak? You don't have to. Yeah. Because usually you let us know.
And I want to say that Mary and I will come to any of your meetings in any of the 4 towns and go over it with your select board or with a community group. We don't mind meeting in small groups. We travel to different places before to talk to people. Certainly will offer that up to any and all of our 4 towns that want us to come there. We can explain it better, answer any questions one-on-one or 2-on-1 or whatever you want to do to thoroughly understand it and hopefully get to a point where we can like we all work together, we all have to support our students and it's really hard. And I know the board didn't want to be at 6.21 with the addition of this, but we also don't want to decimate our schools if we can avoid doing that.
Go ahead.
Any talk about possibly during negotiations, and sorry, please don't shoot me, staff members, about maybe lower, not going with such large increases in wages? You know, during.
That's a process you would have to do, is reopen it, and they can always say no, it's just
Right.
the law, the way you do it is open up. I remember a long time ago, we froze during, I'm an old lady, McKernan years, and we froze, and that came to bite us back in the butt.
Right, I don't mean, you know.
Yeah,
don't
but,
change what is currently in place.
I mean, it's your it's a last resort. I think what hurt us this year the worst is more mandated things,
Right.
increases double digit in insurances.
Yep.
And not having, because Pam will say, she's a real money, she don't put, if it's not real, but we don't know what's real yet, that's the hardest part right here. And what Brian said about co and extracurricular, we had the dropout prevention, and we were talking about attendance. A lot of the kids know if they're in that, they have to be in school, and that has made a difference. I used to only say it was the wrestlers would only be, because they were our unique group, but that was many years. But no, it keeps a kid, because they have to attend, they can't be tardy, they can't miss the class, because they're and their grades, it's accountability.
I
So,
know Peter Holman had his hand.
oh, Peter,
I
go
just
ahead.
am trying to get us so that, I just want to say, I'd like to get us done so that,
The other Peter Holman.
I'm just trying to get us done in time. We have an 8 o'clock executive session and I'd like to have Dr. Murphy be able to go.
Okay.
But I want to hear everybody about the budget, so we
Okay.
might push off our executive session
For a little bit.
briefly, just because I also don't want Dr. Murphy to have to sit around.
I'm not going to speak as a select person of Dixfield or taxpayer. Education is probably one of the most important things. And we all know, like, we had to budget and you end up having to deal with what you have, but the education of the children is very important because let's face it, they're our future. And any cuts that affect their learning or learning ability should not be considered. I know there are other areas that it's tough to cut, but those places that need to be cut do not affect the children as much as possible.
Thank you. Kathleen?
I propose that we write a letter to the Maine Principal Association and to the governor and stand up for girls and women's sports and say no biological boys or men will participate against the women. And that would solve the problem of the money, federal money coming through.
Well, I think the main problem is the dissolvement of the Department of Education means who's gonna run the programs of giving the money out. We don't know. We have no, it's not that he's stopping us. Every state does not know who's gonna be given money. It's
Well, Maine has made national headlines.
correct. But that is, yes, he said he was withdrawing. We have a federal law and we have a Maine civil rights law. That's out of our hands locally. They gotta duke it out and settle it and get it.
But we could take a stand as a board and protect girls and women.
So we would be violating the law that the state of Maine has.
Federal law takes precedent over state laws.
I don't know that legally. So I'm waiting for them, which I think it will get resolved, but it needs to be done. Right now, what we need to make sure is that whoever's gonna run the department's responsibilities are gonna do it. and that there is, because special education, these are vital things for students.
I'm
That,
gonna move us along because
Yeah.
it doesn't really have. It has long-term impacts to our budget, but it's not currently what this budget
affecting
is
it,
focused on.
correct. Natalie, quick.
Okay, I recognize we're right on time, but one comment and a question. Comment. I think it's really important and incumbent on everyone that's here, and we've all 4 communities well represented between the board, select people, budget committee members, to separate the budget year-on-year increase versus the tax impact. Because I think there's a general misunderstanding, right? That, okay, they're talking about a status quo budget being 8%. And so everyone's thinking that's 8% more I'm paying in my taxes next year. What I read in the Sun Journal yesterday, today, about the Lewiston school budget, is the first time I've ever seen in the newspaper, and I wish Bruce was here, a distinction between the school budget and what the impact was on local taxes. So I think it's really important that yes, a status quo budget here is 8.1 or 8.18%. That doesn't equate to an 8.18% increase in any one of our taxes sitting around here. So I think it's super important to understand that, yes, for Dixfield, that's an increase, the 6% budget's an increase.
And it was
as a Canton taxpayer, like I'm sitting here looking at it and thinking that in next year at a 6% budget, I could buy 3 more 18 packs of eggs for my kids and we would be in good shape that way. So my question then is, I wasn't here, I apologize, I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I didn't have the input. At our next meeting, like we're not locked in with all those cuts at this point. We've outlined what those cuts are, but we still at the next board meeting have the opportunity to come together and have more dialogue discussion on where we as individuals, because I will say, I personally am not gonna vote for a 6 point whatever budget that honestly, as we look at Maine being dead last perhaps in test scores, like we all know we aren't where we want to be. We've set a strategic objective and goal that was a community process around adding more rigor, pushing our kids, like having more accountability. Not one of those cuts helps us in that area, and it actually takes away from some of our most vulnerable kids that need the supports. So I guess, I think you nodded and answered my question, that next time we come back.
Oh, yeah, we'll have budget on our
We're
next
not,
thing.
we're not.
We're not voting at the vote yet.
Okay,
No,
thank you.
okay. We gotta move on to, we're gonna do
Dr. Murphy's
and then
we're gonna do our executive session.
all right.
Can I use my playground voice and stand up there, so?
Yes, you can, but don't
Great.
fall down.
I have 2 things I'd like to say before I start my presentation. One is how impressed I am at the number of people that are here representing the towns that make up RSU56. That's great and good dialogue. Second is, what a pleasure to meet Kim.
Oh, he's one of our treasures of DHS.
Y'all never miss me next year.
We will.
Just stand over here so my back isn't to anybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you very much for letting me come tonight and speak. This has been a pleasure. It's also a pleasure to meet and not be the superintendent sitting in the budget meeting. So, thank you. I will tell you though, I was a superintendent for 22 years, thereabouts over in 44. And when we hit $600,000 in subsidy, we were pretty happy. So you're lucky. That's the good news, right? But anyway, I am the Region 9 Adult Ed Director. I'm in my 2nd year in that position. I have been an administrator in a nearby district for 40 years. Before that, I started when I was 6 years old. And, but it's been a real pleasure to take on this job. Initially, when the position became open, I was interested in it because my late wife had been involved in adult ed at Region 9 for a number of years, and the program was really robust. There was a lot going on, and I felt as though maybe there was an opportunity here to kind of build the program back up to maybe what it had been before. And in experiencing the position and the people that I'm working with, the communities that we represent, I'm having a blast. It's great, great people. And I came on board with really two goals. One is to really increase the level of literacy support we provide for adults in the area, which is, pretty substantial. When you stop and think about how small the program is, the Region 9 Adult Ed program has graduated over 20 students in the last 2 years. And right now, we have 5 graduates, and we have the potential of 15 more this year. They're missing one subject that they have to take in order to get their high set credential. There's a lot of good things happening, and part of that really too is the relationship that I think we've been able to form with the high schools. We've had the opportunity to go over here and meet students at Deergo, had the same opportunity over in Mountain Valley. And both principals are working really hard to make sure that students that might in the past have dropped out, take a look at other options, which includes adult education. And we've been very fortunate. We probably picked up half a dozen students between the 2 high schools. And we've seen, last year we saw 2 or 3 graduates who actually graduated before their senior fellows, their classmates in the senior class. So that was a big deal. They got their diploma like the night before their friends did, so that was good. The good news about writing notes is that you have something in front of you. The bad news is when you forget to bring your glasses. So those goals are really important. The other goal that I really have is to try to make the literacy more accessible to students. It's great that we're in the Region 9 building, but the Region 9 building is very difficult for a lot of our students to get to because we're not really accessible. People need transportation or they need money for a taxi cab to get there. And what we find is that a lot of times that's problematic for people. They make a real effort to get there. I will tell you that we've had 2 kids, I'll say kids, because they're still high school age, who really made a commitment to not leave school, but to join adult ed. Last year, we had 1 student that lived on the other side of Congress Street. He skateboarded to Region 9 almost on a daily basis, and he got his high set at the end of the year. This year, we have a student who has been riding his bike all through the snow and everything else to get here. And his attendance has been great. He did not have great attendance when he was in high school, but he's really made the commitment to kind of come here and make it work for him. So that's been really good. But in order to address our ability to attract more students, I've entered into an effort with the Hope Association, and we're working on, we actually received about a $270,000 grant to retrofit their building that they have on Congress Street to have become a satellite location for the adult ed program. That still has to get approved by the Region 9 board, still has to get approved by the Hope Association board. The funding has been secured. Work is actually been started on the building, because if we don't end up still on the building, they've got $270,000 to work on it. But it's being retrofitted primarily as a spot for adult education, both literacy and enrichment, as well as a place for telehealth, for people in the community who may want to come in and take advantage of the space, have appointments with their doctors and so on. That's gonna be great for the people that live in that area. We figure right now we have about 80% of our students who are within walking distance of Congress Street. The bigger problem I see is this area, because it's even that much further away. But for a lot of people who live in this area to get to the Region 9 building. So one of the things that we do have in our budget moving forward is money for tutorial support. And what we're really hoping is that we can identify a place in RSU56 that we can set up maybe another satellite program, and that may not happen quite as quickly, but to begin the opportunity to expand our literacy services to this area as well. Because I think we have a lot of people who didn't graduate from high school, but who may still want to come back and complete their accreditation. The other thing that we're doing too is just cut this away. If you know anybody that it applies to, I'd really appreciate it if you spread it around. Working closely with the DOE to take advantage of a law that exists on the books right now that will allow veterans who did not receive their high school diploma, but who left school in order to serve their country, the opportunity to get high school diploma basically as a thank you. And we put it out, I've met with people from the Legion, talked to different people in different areas, I've talked to superintendents. Really trying to get that out there, because we want to acknowledge the service of those people. And if the state provides that opportunity for people who left to serve their country to come back and receive a diploma, then it can be posthumous, they can be alive, it can be a family that lost someone who was a graduate, they can still get that posthumously. So if you could help spread that word, that would be great. I think it's just the right thing to do to acknowledge, the effort that a lot of people have made to defend their country. The only prerequisite is that we've had to have left high school specifically to join the service. So help spread that word if you could.
Is that something you could make available for the town offices so they can?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Bruce had mentioned earlier too, that the good news is the adult education budget is not going to have any kind of a positive impact. It will have a positive impact, but your contribution is actually going to be down by about $18,000. And the way your share of that amount is calculated is based on the census. 50% of the amount budgeted or expended is based on the 2020 census. So RSU 10 pays so much, RSU 56 pays so much based on a formula. And then we have a lot of small districts like Gilead and Upton and Andover, Byron. They just pay a flat fee because they usually don't have very many, if any, students who actually attend. So that's part of it. And the other part is usage, the number of people that actually participate in our programs. And this year we had about 65, give or take, people from RSU 56. And that number dropped a little bit from last year. I think it was 72 maybe last year. And then Mountain Valley or RSU 10's numbers actually kind of went up quite a bit. So that created a bigger spread. So this year you're paying substantially less than you paid last year. And RSU 10 is going to be paying more. So over the last 2 years, at least since I've been here, the breakdown 2 years ago, you paid $111,701 towards adult ed. Last year, you paid $109,600. And your assessment for the adult ed program this year, the Region 9 adult ed, is $91,395. So our services are going up. I think the quality of the services is improving. And what we're trying to do is take money that already exists within the budget, reallocate it, do different things with it, provide different kinds of programming, and try to get whatever we can as far as grant money goes. Working very cooperatively with Pam and Deb over in RSU 10. We meet regularly and we communicate often and try to keep in touch with each other. So goal is to kind of keep moving in a positive direction, try to get more literacy, more enrichment programs. One last thing I'll say is I put the call this year to different schools. And I'm trying to get our enrichment programs to be held in other places besides just at the Region 9 building for the same reasons. And we did offer a workshop here through the Oxford Federal Credit Union. We also had an art class a year ago as well. So those were the first two off-site enrichment programs. We're hoping to build on that. Finally, I guess, if there's any way that you can spread the word, anybody that's in the room tonight, if you have a hobby, if you know somebody who's interested in a particular topic, please have them contact us. Because as much as the primary focus of adult education is literacy, to try to help those people get their ISET degrees, we know that one of the ways people become most familiar with adult ed is through participation in our enrichment programs. And the more we can do to expand that, we have sports card collecting evenings going on right now. And the enthusiasm is unlike anything I've ever seen. Somebody came in with a Hank Aaron rookie. They're like, "Whoa, Hank Aaron rookie." But we can offer anything that people have interest in. So please keep me in mind and let me know, and we'll get something up in the town offices about the veterans. Thank you very much for letting me speak tonight.
Thank you. Any questions for Dave?
Any questions? Happy to respond.
Just a comment, Dave. I've noticed a big change since you've been there for the very positive, and you've done outstanding work. Because I remember when your wife came up here, so she'd be very proud.
Bruce and Brian may remember this, but when they hired me, I said, I promised them I'd be the second best Murphy they ever.
That's.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I've gotta go in. I'm gonna enter into executive session pursuant to one MRSA subsection B for discussion or consideration by the school board of suspension or expulsion of a public student. Could I get a motion?
Motion.
I get second? Second. All those in favor? We'll take a minute to get out. Get stopped.
Right.
Canvas.
Right, you're online.
I would put
That's where it's. Yeah.
for a student report, he messaged me.
Oh.
And it's like, oh, something
You're
right
gonna
there.
sign up.
We're over and.
Oh, that,
Yeah, just so you know.
okay, I'll report to it, stuff at work, poor guy. Soon as Brian gets, we're good. All right, we're gonna go back to the, oh, I'm sorry, I need a motion. I entertain a motion. Thank you, Natalie.
I move, that we proceed with an expulsion of a public school student, contingent on completion of a plan for reentry.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, comments or questions? All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Now we're at second reading of GCSB. The use of social media by school employees. We had done a first reading in January. It was sent back to the policy committee, which did a lot of work. And we had a lot of input. So you can see the changes in yellow and the striked out things. So I think we've established a good. Could I get a motion, please?
So.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, comments and questions, now's the time. Because what we tried to really emphasize that the social media thing is for work and professional. So when they're doing something with, that's why they will use their school email. And we referred to one of the policies because in one of our policies, we have sometimes employees are related or family friends of people, so they understand that. And without a cause to withdraw the approval. We put a date, August 1st for review, which will be, Brian will have lovely, it will work, but he'll work with everyone involved, and you can see the changes. Seeing no questions, all those in favor? Thank you. That was good work. And you guys were taking it back. It really was a good, and Heidi was too, it really worked well. That was okay.
I sent you the sample advisory question, so if you want to put it up there, because I understand some people couldn't see it in advance.
I didn't even see it, and I was on the road. So
I think it's in your folder too.
no,
Because I didn't get it until after I had left the building.
Okay. So this was brought forward, Lewiston Public Schools uses this just to get some feedback from voters when they vote. So I just rewrote it so it'd be, RSU56. So if we want to put it on there, just to get feedback, we could. It basically just asks, the following is a non-binding expression of opinion for the consideration of the budget. I find the RSU56 school budget for the upcoming school year that was adopted, blah, 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 was too high, too low, or acceptable. Just, and we don't have to add it, it's.
I think we did it when we had our
year
three
that we
chart
had-
one. We did it on the second one, I think, or the third. We had it.
I was gonna say, I remember,
Something
I remember
similar.
doing this a few years ago when we had multiple iterations of budget that
Yeah.
weren't passing, somewhere in the middle. We had put one of these out with the budget vote. And I don't know if anyone recalls,
I think it was, is it too high or too low? We
Was
didn't
it
have
like-
accepted.
but
It's like 29 to 1.
29 to I and 1.
It may not be anything we want confirmation, I don't.
I don't know, I think it might be helpful to hear what people.
Yeah, if, you know, because we do get a lot of voters now.
We do, and they don't always come to the school board members, so maybe this would be a good
Yeah.
answer to
And
say.
you might vote yes, and then say it's still too high.
Right.
Yeah.
They may,
Yeah.
you know, but it can't hurt to put it in consideration.
So,
Just a point of efficacy on it. A lot of people, when they read that, would read it and they'll say vote for one. And I hate to tell you this, but most people vote for the first thing that they see. And they're gonna
So I have to
vote
put it in
too
a
high.
mix it up.
So maybe.
So the
mix it up.
shopping tells you
We should fix
acceptable
it right now.
as the top one, too low as the middle one, and too high as the bottom one. Purpose behind that is efficacy tells you you're gonna read it from top to bottom, and more than likely, you're gonna get to where you wanna accept it, and you're gonna vote for that one. If you have it too high, a lot of people are gonna vote too high just because that's the first
It's
one.
the top one,
There's psychology involved.
so maybe just rearrange those answers
Yeah.
a little bit.
Well, there's also the psychological component that
Okay.
if I'm in the voting
Looks
booth
like
and I
a-
have these, well, probably
going,
3
one and a
ballots
half.
or whatever that I'm, or 3 pieces of paper that I'm filling out. Like if I get that one first and I think it's too high, is that gonna influence my vote?
It wouldn't be the first one, it would be after.
It would be towards the end
Yeah.
or something.
Okay.
okay,
Yeah, we don't have to, again, we don't have to use it, I just wondered with Loiston doing it, whether it would be something we'd wanna know.
I don't think it was helpful for us last
No,
time,
it
if I
wasn't.
remember correctly, it wasn't helpful, but I think. Speaking of psychology, I don't know that it's gonna help us. My guess is it's gonna be very mixed, and without a comment field, which obviously you can't put on, but without further dialogue to put a response in perspective, you know, okay, how much is it worth? But I do think that there's value in community engagement. So even if we get 33% on each of those 3, and as a board, we look at the results and say, all right, it didn't tell us anything. It gave
Then the
it
option.
gave community members a chance to weigh in. And even though we have lots of meetings and we try to have a lot of opportunities for people to weigh in, there's still that element that like, no one's listening to my perspective on it, so this might be helpful in that regard.
Yeah.
okay, so do I have a motion on this? Anyone?
Oh, you can't. Yeah, you can't.
So you're looking to add this onto the ballot?
Correct.
We were just asking if there's anything that the board would like to have added to the ballot.
I think it's a great idea.
The
It
next
gives
question
them-
I'm gonna ask, that I know it's gonna come up, is this gonna cost anything money wise?
We're already printing the ballot,
So it makes no difference.
No,
We're gonna look at
it
it.
doesn't make an
Two more
extra
cents, they're
page.
gonna
We're
worry.
on the same page, like, do you
Right.
vote yet, like, what's your vote on the budget, and then what's your thought on the budget?
Oh, because it's a one pager anyways, yeah, the budget.
And they're all, will already be 2 questions on the budget, because this is the year that everybody has to vote if they want to continue with the referendum process.
Oh, yeah.
So the only thing that will cost is that at the town offices, they'll have to count 1 extra question.
I
No,
propose
it's
that
done.
we put it on.
I think
All right.
it's-
I got a motion, did you have a second? Comments or questions?
I like it, I like your idea of
Me
flipping.
too.
I just did.
Okay.
Yeah, I like it.
Who was the second? I'm sorry.
Liz.
Okay.
I forgot.
Yeah, comments, all those in
Is
favor?
that the way you wanted it first?
No.
You wanted acceptable,
Acceptable
for both that too low and too high.
I'm already going ahead.
I'm only doing it now because I know that I won't get back to it later.
That's all right.
That's okay.
Now,
So,
is it the way you want it?
That's the way
I like it.
so there's no Joy here, so who's doing the 21st century?
Oh, I'm sorry, Joy is sick, so she couldn't
Yeah.
make it to the
Making it.
So we have an after-school program that's funded through a 21st century grant. It runs out at the end of June. So the RFP to reapply is open July 1st. And I could tell you more about the 21st century program, but you probably already know that it houses kids after school and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I will have Joy come to a future meeting to kind of give you an update on 21st century. But we just need to have the board vote that we can submit a 21st century grant, because the difference between this one and the last one The last one, Oxford County Mental Health Services was the fiscal agent. And they no longer want to be the fiscal agent, so RSU56 would be the fiscal agent. Hence, the board needs to vote that it's okay for us to submit.
Is it gonna cost us anything?
So it doesn't cost us anything different. Some of Mary's time, but.
Wait a minute, isn't this another fiscal agent should be, will be again? Who was the other one we took over?
Brian's.
That's for the rest.
Ryan. Script.
I propose that,
Okay.
We don't have all that ESSER grants that she's juggling, so.
I propose that we reapply, and maybe Brian can be in charge this time. So I propose that we reapply.
And I'll second that.
Second, comments or question? Now, I did give I think that's why Nick Waugh emailed me, because how important the after school
Right.
program is.
Yeah.
And I told him, so, but didn't I read they were cutting it?
So you can only, it goes down, it decreases each of the.
Which I
3
know
years.
they do, yeah.
So you can only start at the level you currently are. So our third year amount was $144,994.55.
Yeah,
So
okay,
that's what we could apply for first year, and then it gets decreased each.
yeah, I knew that, okay. All right, any other question, comments? All those in favor? Hopefully we get it, I know how
Well, actually, I
important
do
it is.
have a question. That's what we pay for transportation for.
So yes, we paid for a portion of the transportation.
And
That's our
I included that in our budget.
We
for
have
next year.
included that in our
Okay,
budget,
okay.
yeah.
That's my question. I'm glad you asked
It's the late bus, so
Yeah.
it covers the after school program, but it also helps with the middle school and the high school kids
So
that
it's
need
kind of
it.
lumped together.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right, board member comments.
Oh,
But
no.
Go ahead, Carl.
because I missed to ask it before, what is pedagogical?
Pedagogical, it's just how you, it's kind of like your philosophy of how you do something. It's your theory of it.
It's my word for the day.
I remember.
It's
when-
pedi- usually it's
Pronounce that properly?
Pedagogy or pedagogy. Yeah.
Peda what?
It was in one of our things, and I'm going to
It
read.
was in the social media thing.
Yes,
was the
it
first time.
was.
So I didn't see it till I reread it.
I like that he wrote it down a few times over.
Figure out.
You learn a new word.
Any other board member, Don?
This year we're got an extra $838,000, which has helped reduce
Yeah.
money to the town. Do you think the state is gonna stay there? Somewhat close to that.
So that is what we've been told is that now that the budget's passed, they believe that those preliminaries will stand. In fact, they advised us to put the, if you get additional, what are you gonna do with it? Because they said there might even actually be additional money.
What my question is. do you
Like
think
the
next-
following years?
Yeah, we're gonna get there, so is this something they give us once and then they're taking it away?
So we haven't historically had like big increases and then big decreases. It's been relatively steady, so I wouldn't envision that they would take it away unless they decided, they did a biennial, so it's 2 years.
But if these towns are all getting reevaluated,
Yeah, I can't,
this should keep this money coming in.
it will go through the formula every year, it goes through the formula, and they are looking to readjust the formula, they've done a study on it, which I've said a couple of times makes me super nervous, because when anytime you readjust formulas, there's winners and losers. So I can't tell you what the state would do in the following years, but I don't have any history that would say huge increases and then huge
The
decreases.
state of Maine has been giving out a lot, but they take back quite often.
Natalie?
I guess, I have a follow-up question to that. Obviously, it appears like the representation on some of the committees that are involved in reviewing the proposals for funding moving forward. There's more representation, obviously, from larger population areas. Is there, have we engaged local representatives? Like, what's your impression from superintendents meetings and whatnot on like rural representation, but like you know, I mean, it's, there's a lot of Southern Maine and Lewiston and
Or
population centers have more representation on some of these committees than what rural Maine does. And the reality is, rural Maine has been hit probably the hardest with increased valuations and then without the increased ability to pay property taxes. So I guess that's my concern when anytime they talk about changing the formula.
So if you know me and I'm pretty similar to a lot of superintendents, we're not quiet. And I email everybody, Susan Collins, doesn't matter to me who they are, what they have a D or an R and I after them. If there's something comes up, I email them. And sometimes I get all of their weekly updates, but it's okay. But no, we're very vocal and then very on top of like this
Do
funding.
you have any gut feeling in terms of like, there are winners and losers, or is rural Maine? Where do you think we're gonna?
I don't think we'll be on the losing end. I think they're very aware of the discrepancies across the state, so.
Because when land evaluation went up and enrollment probably has gone down in the rural communities that you look around.
But
Or so that's like the way it sits now, it's losing now.
Yeah, I mean, some of the articles I'm reading
it's
about.
scary.
Well,
I know.
about the Biddeford superintendent
I saw that.
complaining about the percentage of state aid that they could lose, and all I could think of was, I would love to be sitting in Biddeford right now with your ability, like, and population density and whatnot to cover that versus much of the rest of the state, so I will get off my.
And when I went to Augusta, I went to one of them and I forgot who it was, and they wanted to know what we thought of the funding formula. I said, it's Russian roulette, and I said, you know, you gotta realize up here what we get, we're bare bones and getting stuff, and I was worried, I read some of the articles, and I did read where they're supposed to look into where being rural, we're in the poverty areas. And they've got to realize that, you know, we're not just
That was
working
the
with.
discussion was there's quite a lot of homelessness and poverty around Biddeford and Portland, and like, yes.
But they,
And we have,
and
you also have a tax base and businesses that
you've
can
got
grow
this,
Right.
that we don't see in other parts of the areas.
I had some concerns in some of the articles I read about, you know, the Maine Principal Association going, oh, well, we don't get that much federal funding anyway. It's not really gonna negatively affect, we get most of our funding from other things, and all I can think is, well, we can count on a lot of that.
I agree with
And
that.
that's going to really kill us.
Yes, it is. I agree with that one.
So I'm hoping they work out whatever they work out soon.
Yeah. Bruce,
So far, talking with people out in the community, it seems like most everybody's been very quiet about what's going on with our schools. I haven't heard any vocabulary of, gee, it's too high, too low, to whatever. Which has me concerned. We either have communities who are gonna go bombard us at voting time, or we have communities that are gonna support us at voting time. I've looked at our communities that would support our schools, and they've been very supportive of what we've done. They've seen what programs we've done. Hopefully, they're paying attention to what we're doing fiscally and trying to be responsible to move forward with our schools. Putting on my second hat of Region 9, I realize $10,000 increase is $10,000 increase, but the amount of students that Region RSU56 sends to Region 9 and what it does for the purposes and keeps kids in school, they're getting a lot for the additional amount of funds that we're doing. You know, the things that is frustrating, as we all know, is these unknowns. And I'm not saying the unknowns of our ED 279 or budget or anything along that. I'm talking health insurance, heating costs, utilities, all these things that can take something that you think you have lined up and throw it right up in the air again. So I think this board has done its due diligence is what they're looking at. We've done our homework. We've made everything that we can streamline without starting to making students suffer. I'm hoping that the communities will support us and move us forward.
Matt,
Sorry, one more. I guess I would look at Pam and then also the other administrators that are here, especially building administrators. I
like Jason, I'm not gonna speak for you, but I am gonna share that Jason and I had a couple hours at a middle school dance. And I was chaperoning, and we kind of cornered one another to talk about the budget as we were chaperoning the middle school dance. And like Jason had some really good information that as a board member, like I feel like and as a parent, I feel like I'm pretty well informed compared to maybe other folks that aren't at board meetings and aren't looking at the budget. And, you know, as Jason sharing with me, like that we are at or below EPS for staff in a couple of our buildings, like some of these things. I guess I knew, but I didn't really know. And, you know, I think it's great that we had a lot of folks here tonight and we had some good feedback that, you know, we don't want to see cuts that are going to impact the students. If anybody has looked at our budget and has looked at our budget process for the last 7 years since we've been in RSU, like there are no cuts that aren't going to impact students at this point. Like there's no fluffy money anywhere in our budget, right? Like there's not a single cut up there that doesn't impact a student, multiple students, and our ability to like, we're not even, I've heard one thing on the news a lot recently about like, we're throwing more money at education and we're getting less results. We're not, we're throwing more money at medical insurance and utilities and these other uncontrollables. Like, I would love to sit here and have a real conversation about how we're going to put more money towards education. I don't think I've had the luxury of having that conversation. I've been on the 10 board and this board for 10 or 11 years now, and I've never been able to have that conversation. So I guess my request as a board member, but I also think it's important for our communities, like I would like you guys before the next meeting to like put together a tough love slide. And I don't care if it's shared publicly, if you email it to us, whatever, like really, our supply lines are lower than they were pre-COVID, is that right? I think so, right? So our supply lines are lower than they were 5-6 years ago, and our supplies don't cost less. Our buildings, do we have 2 buildings where we don't have staff ratios at EPS?
Yes.
We're below?
Yeah.
Where, like, does everyone know that? Like, we're not even meeting state and their requirements are not super high, right? Like, we're not even reaching state requirements for staffing of our buildings. Like these, and we're looking at cuts, and I believe me, I get it. We're also raising 3 kids and running a small family business, and I'm well aware of trying to balance budgets and make businesses run and schools run and being able to pay grocery bills. But I just, like, I don't know if everyone, even sitting here, because I'm sure that there are a lot of things that I don't know. And I recognize, like, as administrators and as an administrative team, it's you guys' job for us to say, okay, 2%, and you guys come back to us and say, without prejudice, sometimes like this is what it takes to get to 2%, knowing that it would completely decimate everything that we offer, really, right? Like, but if we told you that, like, you would do it. And I appreciate that you guys have had these conversations and have not come back to us and said, like, Natalie, you're silly for thinking 2%, like, kind of stupid for thinking 2%, that's not doable. Like, I'm sure anything is doable on paper, but like, I guess I would be okay with a more unfiltered bit of information from you guys on, like, here are some other facts to consider. Like, vote the way you want to, but like, I think it's naive for any of us or really anybody in the community to say that, okay, go ahead and make cuts, but don't impact kids. Like, because we all know that we can't without impacting kids. So we're trying to do the least damage to the least number of people, right? Like, which sucks. But I don't know. I mean, do you feel comfortable with that? Am I asking you to do something that, like, I would love just some bullet points on like facts.
We can probably pull something together.
Because I think, I mean, that, I would like to be able to go to Brian and Carol and the Canton Select Board and say, okay, guys, like, I recognize we have to balance a town budget and we've had some big increases this year. We're not the one that has it. But that doesn't make it that much better for the town budget. But I mean, at least then you have the information.
Yep.
So it's not so much, like, if it's just there on paper, it's like, well, look, that's doable. Okay, but are you taking into consideration everything that we've, like the cumulative impact of multiple years of this? And we're not unique in that, and I wanna make sure that I have the full picture, I guess, and it doesn't make it any easier, but, I think it's important.
I can do a fact sheet from where we started 8 years ago to where we are now with number of teachers per building and supply lines and all of that.
And I just, as a comment, to remember, like, sometimes they tell us, like, for example, Charlie cut the contracted services. Well, you know, I was worried, then you go, well, they haven't had anybody, and they're probably not gonna find anybody next year. So that's, I know, one of the reasons that the admin looks at, well, I'm losing teachers retiring, but we also know the school, what our numbers are, which is facts in the where, and then, well, if I have less kids, how many staff do I need? That's the thing I think they look at too, not just, but it is all thing. All right, any other comments? All right, superintendent's report.
I'll start by saying, I seriously hope that yesterday's snowstorm was the last time I have to talk to Kenny at 4 o'clock in the morning to determine whether we're gonna have a snow day, remote day, early release, whatever. Ready for spring just because of the snowstorm things. Our current last day of school right now is Wednesday, June 11th. Because we've only had 3 snow days, and moving forward, instead of snow days, we've utilized remote days whenever possible. That's one reason why I was a little edgy yesterday morning, because last Thursday, when we had students in the building, I wasn't thinking snow day on Monday. And then Thursday night, I'm watching the news and I'm like, oh. My husband's like, well, just send food tomorrow. I'm like, I don't have any kids tomorrow. I can't send food. So it kind of got me a little bit unaware. Last week, I was able to see some fun stuff happening at the middle school. I won't go into it too much because I'm sure Mr. Long will. But they had a lot of activities going on to end the celebration of the trimester. And I don't know if you'll point this out, but I'm going to. One thing that I was really impressed with was it was a day-long celebration and the kids had lots of activities and choices for the day. But the first part of the day, I think it was like 90 minutes, students that needed to finish work or needed support to finish the trimester work worked with a couple of teachers and then went into the activities. So it was a great way to, one, celebrate all those that had done what they needed to do to get through the semester and also support the rest of them so that they could finish the semester and not get way behind. I also spent time watching the spring fling here at the high school, and it was wonderful. The student participation and the excitement was truly, it was heartwarming, and the sense of community in the gymnasium was palatable. And Cam, would you like to say which group won overall?
Take a wild guess.
Well, seniors.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're better.
Okay.
Can't repeat the score.
I am, what are you talking about?
Okay.
I also wanted to let you know that I did have the opportunity to visit all 3 schools on the workshop day. And I thought there was a really great mix of learning, professional development and fun. I saw the middle school working on verbal judo, which is just provide strategies and terminologies you can use to help reduce conflict and de-escalate students. At the high school, I popped into a full staff meeting. They were having professional development with Cora Saul, and they were working on creating engaging lessons and what they needed to add into the lessons.
Okay, what were they working with?
Cora Saul.
What is that?
She's a professional development.
Okay,
provider.
all right.
So that's her name. Her name is Cora.
Okay, I thought it was some program.
No, sorry. Well, first they came here. And at DES, they spent a lot of time learning the amplified intervention portion of the reading program, which was great. And then they had time to continue their letters training. And our special education staff were able to spend the day with Gretchen Curtis, who is our therapeutic crisis intervention trainer for the district. So they were able to get their recertification done during school times. And I just want to do a huge shout out to our 3 principals and our special ed director, because they create those days, they organize those days, and I thought they were really valuable and appropriate across the district. And as Jason's preparing to come up to present, I'm gonna do some stipend and coaching positions. We have varsity basketball at the high school, Derek Volternick. JV baseball at the high school,
Varsity.
Tanya.
Baseball.
Baseball.
Oh,
Did I say
basketball.
Did I say baseball for both of them?
You
No, you
said
said varsity
basketball.
Okay, varsity baseball, Derek Volpernick, JV baseball, Dartana Bourget, boys tennis, Bruce Thompson, and girls tennis, Kurt Rowley. And at the middle school, varsity baseball, Mike Leclerc, JV baseball, Kyle Neely, varsity softball, Matt Libby, JV softball, Stephanie Lapointe, assistant track coach, Ethan Kutcher, and the Jericho High School National Honor Society advisor, Mr. Jason Long. And temporarily to get us through the year. And I do have one resignation. George Yancowitz at the elementary school is teacher. She'll be resigning at the end of this year. And now it's you, Mr. Long.
All right, you ready for my 3-hour presentation? So here is our winter, spring building report for the middle school. I follow a particular format every year, and I just basically continue that format for you now. When I presented to you in the fall, we had 180 students. Now we have 180 students. So we lost a couple, gained a couple, and it came out the same. Our attendance data. So this goes all the way back to 21. Right now, we have one student who is actively truant, although we had a really good breakthrough today with law enforcement and that family, and I won't talk more, but 10 kids overall have received warning letters because they're approaching truancy. It's important to note, though, that truancy is in the state of Maine when your absences are not excusable. And a lot of the time, that's a byproduct of family not communicating with the school. So I don't want to present this and claim like our attendance issues are awesome. Like, no, we have a lot of students with a lot of excused absences. And that is chronic absenteeism, which is legally a different thing. And honestly, a little harder to address because there are no teeth whatsoever with chronic absenteeism. But we are on top of this as we ought to be. So academics, last year at this time, I presented just some basics of the use of IXL. IXL is academic software, it's practice software, it's homework stuff, most kids. I just wanted to point out that last year versus this year, kids have done more. We have more skills that have been mastered this year than last year at this time, more skills that have been reached to the point of proficient, and thousands more skills that have been practiced using that software. And we actually have had a little improvement. So it doesn't look like a lot, but if I'm going to compare this year's fall to winter growth to last year's fall to winter growth. Okay. So the green is that the student clearly met their growth goal. The yellow is that the student did not meet the growth goal at a high enough figure that it's outside of the margin of error. Okay, so it's kind of like, did they meet it? Yeah, maybe, maybe not. And then red, we don't like red. Red is the student did not meet their growth goal. And so every year, what I look at most is growth rather than achievement, because every cohort that comes into my building, every kid is in a different place. I want to meet them where they are and see them improve. I'm happy to say this year that in English, we had more kids meet their goal and fewer kids definitely not meet their goal than last year. And the same is for math. We had more kids meet their goal, but more importantly, we had fewer kids definitely not meet their goal. Looking at the data in a different way, this is a scatter plot quadrant chart. Charlie loves this chart. So the y-axis is your conditional growth percentile. That means nationally, okay? So based on how you started on that test and where you ended on that test in the winter after however many months of instruction, that is where you are nationally. And then the x-axis is your achievement percentile nationally, okay? So if you are in the green,
I hated geometry, so tell me something.
okay,
Okay, just so you know,
if the thingy's in the green,
thank you.
you got it. That means that you have high growth and high achievement. If the dot is in the orange, you had high growth but still low achievement. If the dot is in the yellow, you had high achievement but low growth. Because actually, the better you do on these tests, the harder it is to show more improvement. And if you're in the pink, if you're in that little
Purple, pink.
okay, whatever it is, that's low growth, low achievement, generally speaking. This is last year's scatter.
Oh, okay.
Okay, the plus signs represent math scores, the squares represent English scores. So this is just a different way for me to show you, like, these are our kids. These, to me, they're not numbers, they're kids. I look at them and I see my kids. So last year, we had too many kids in the very bottom of the pink. Okay, there's a scary concentration there. And I think the reason there's a scary concentration there is because the behavioral challenges we're facing as a building got in the way of learning. That is a better looking scatter plot.
Oh, this is this year.
This is this year. I'm not saying we're the bestest ever. I'm just saying that's improvement. There's more in the green. There's a better distribution. You can't really tell because they're not on, you can't see when things are on top of each other. But that little chunk in the very corner of the pink, a lot of those students are students with IEPs. And the NWA is just not a good test to measure their growth.
Okay. Child with ADHD, I get it.
So, the result is, last year I told you we had mixed results. This year I'm telling you we still have mixed results. We are seeing a positive trend. We are seeing improvement. I'll be frank, there are fewer gains than I hoped. I thought we'd do a little better. I had some kids who blew my mind with how well they did, way exceeded my expectations. I had other kids who was a really bad testing day. And yeah, so still mixed results, but the overall trend is positive. I don't feel bad about it. I feel like it's encouraging some of the changes that we have made. But I'm not satisfied. All right, another fun chart with Mr. Long. So I like.
Oh, I can read this.
You can read this, okay. So, yeah, so what that tells you is the average number of office referrals per day by month. And the bars all the way to the right, that's my first year as a principal. That's in 2017, 2018. And then you see that big dip in the middle, that was COVID, not a lot of office referrals when they were all at home. Okay. And then you see that really crazy set of red bars. That was last year.
Yeah.
So last year in the month of November, I had 10 referrals a day to my office on average.
So how's that class doing? Better this year?
Are they up here?
So 1/3 of that student body is now up here. 2/3 are still in my building, plus a group. Charlie gave me headphones when I inherited. Yeah. So I want to be clear, like you can see now, the blue all the way to the left, that's right now. We've restored sanity.
Better.
Okay, it's dramatically better. But I want to be clear, that doesn't mean that everything's cupcakes and rainbows. That's my teachers doing more of the legwork on their own. And that's the benefit of the BAR program. Building assets, reducing risks, the program here at the high school, that this is our first year of having it at the middle school. We're using all of our late arrival Wednesday time, and teachers in different groups following research-based protocols are talking about kids and dividing up the work of, you call that parent, I'm gonna do this, let's try this intervention. And what I did last year and failed is when I have 10 things coming in and out of my office every day, I'm trying to come up with solutions, right? And I don't have time to talk to all the teachers and get all their input. So I'm just like wheeling and dealing here, trying to figure out how to manage crazy situations. This year, the teachers are taking more ownership of it. It's the priority of the school, and it's a huge benefit.
Awesome.
So we're
Do
getting.
you feel less stressed for that now? I know you care so much.
I'll tell you what it's let me do. It has let me spend more of my time doing the job the building really needs, which is me going into classrooms, trying, like Pam and I went into 4 classrooms together today. Try to provide feedback to teachers to help them as they grow and emerge with their instruction, to do more things that are proactive. So I was very reactive last year. So I'm feeling better. I'm not feeling satisfied, but I'm feeling.
What's the last sentence on that?
All right, so I'll just read the whole thing and explain it as I go. So 20 students are currently on a tier 2 check and check out behavior plan. We had 24 last year, so roughly the same number of kids. A check and check out behavior plan is a student has specific goals that are tailored to them. When you modify behavior, you don't try to fix everything at once. You focus on this and this right now. And then every period, the student receives feedback on how they did for that period. We collect these and we use the data anyway. So it's more than 10% of the school. Then we welcome back 3 students from out of district placements. That's huge. We have 2 students who have returned to the regular setting from WFRP. And we have 1 student come to us previously attending Margaret Murphy. And our building has been able to include them and welcome them, and it's a process for everyone. But I'm proud of it. I'm really proud of our special education teachers in the school.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Referrals by student. Every year it's kind of the same thing, right? I always tell you that most of the referrals come from a relatively small number of students. What's interesting is that this year, half the referrals come from 5% of the population. Last year, it was half the referrals came from 10% of the population. So I'm boxing them in. But also the overall number of referrals is so dramatically lower. It's almost unfair to compare the data because we're living in 2 completely different systems for dealing with behavior. So our hard work is paying off. That's how I feel. Building assets, reducing risks. That's sort of what is driving a lot of the positive change. We have an awesome school coach, and Kristen Hartley. She's also the coach that the high school has. Our bar coordinator is an absolute rock star, Stacey Gilbert. We've had trainings, variety of different types of meetings. The big payoff, communication has improved. And as I said, teachers are working together to deal with behavior. And then we're also using the data. So this is something that I have the time to do this now and I didn't before. Someone brought up the point at one of our bar meetings, Jason, it's really great how hard we work to help the kids who are struggling. There are so many kids who do the right things every day, and we don't do enough to reward and honor them. And that's true, we don't. So now that I didn't have my whole day absorbed with office referrals, I was like, well, what can I do about it? So instead of having those check and check out points, which they could turn in for rewards and things, now every kid is part of a school-wide point system where every week you have perfect attendance, you get a point. Every 2 weeks, because I check the entire school's grades every 2 weeks and personally talk to every kid in my school with a failing grade once every 2 weeks. If they're not failing anything, they get 2 points. When they take the NWEAs, any assessment growth from test to test, they get those points. We have cougar paws for a caught being good, caught doing good kind of a thing. Every time you receive one of those, that's a point. Our students on check and check out also get a point every day that they meet their check and check out goal. So it's a lot of me pulling data from a variety of places, but then those points add up and any student can spend them on open gym on Wednesdays. We've got some really cool prize drawers working right now. We've had some donations for that, some PBIS funds for that. And it's, it sounds hokey, but sometimes as cool as middle school kids act like they are, hokey, they're still kids, and the fact the average kid who does everything he's supposed to do or she's supposed to do in a given month winds up getting an open gym period once a month. That feels more fair than it's just the kids on the check and check out plan having a chance to earn those things. Yeah. We have another sort of fun thing because I have the time. We have a weekly principals lab. So every Thursday, if you're on the academic ineligible list, lucky you, you get to hang out in a special study hall with me. And we're gonna work on that. And I gotta tell you, I've tried so many different things to try to motivate kids. There's one 8th grade student who I swear to you, she's passing everything because she just does not want to spend a learning lab dealing with me. Hey. No. Another really important thing is we've changed the way we track some of the data. So previously, we were really good about having all these Swiss referrals. Everything was referral. But there were kids who'd be sent to the office and then the teacher might never actually write the referral. So in a lot of ways, what I feel like we learned, and I got a lot of this feedback from Charlie, I feel like sometimes when I got a referral, it was more a reflection of that the teacher was fed up than a reflection of what actually just happened. So we've sort of de-emphasized the referral. And now every single time a kid comes to the office, we enter it into a spreadsheet. We have this whole tracking system. And anytime in a given day, if a kid needs 2 breaks to the office, I call home. I don't care if the 2 breaks are not even in trouble. I'm just letting parents know. I don't know what's going on, but so-and-so hasn't made it, twice they've been down here today. If it happens 3 times, I'm not sending them back to class. I'm all done. I'm all done sending the tornado back into the room.
And it is mandatory, because when I fill in for Jason, Lisa's like, shalom, second one. It's funny. You listen to her. I know, I think it's great. And I'm like, I don't know what you're saying. That's consistency.
Yeah, so I feel like that hard work is paying off. But I'm gonna say it, like, compared to when I began in this building, I have more students and fewer staff. And it is a heavy lift. I don't think throwing money at the problem is what solves the problem. I think working smarter matters, but there is a point where you don't have enough. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. We're working hard. Summer school, all right. So I presented this to you every year since 2020. When we first started moving toward having a summer school at the middle level, we only focused on 1 trimester and 4 content areas, because that's how many kids were failing classes. And then, like, it was too big of a problem. I'd have to have the whole school come back, which is horrifying. But that's where we were when we started as a new district. 21, we increased that to all of the trimesters, but still just the 4 content areas. In 22, it was any class in the 4 content areas. And had a couple years of, are you sure, Mr. Long, do you mean it? And then the numbers started to come down. So last summer, we had 17 students require summer school. I'll tell you that the number was a little bigger than that, but what we do is if you're in the 8th grade, we run like a before summer school just for 8th graders. Because if they haven't passed all of their classes, I will not give them their promotion certificate. And no 8th grader wants to go to middle school summer school. So we give them that chance, but that's an intervention. And then so far this year, we only have 16 kids in the school who failed anything. And a number of those 16, it was 1 class last trimester. So really the number of failed classes is down compared to last year. So I know some of you are gonna like this. It is time. So when I became principal, we had no summer school. The only time eligibility checks happened was if you were in a sport. 2019, I began running my school-wide academic probation system, checking on all kids' grades. Spent 2 years gradually increasing summer school requirements. Spent 3 years trying to stabilize what that meant. I think we're ready to raise the bar. I'm dropping the 50 next year.
Oh, you do have that. I remember we discussed that.
When we began, it didn't matter if you failed.
It's true, I remember that, yes.
So if you want to change a culture, you have to do it in baby steps, and you can't set everyone up to continue to fail. Our summer school numbers are under control. Our intervention efforts are stronger. Next year, we will no longer have lowest graders of 50 in the middle school. I think the kids are ready.
Yeah.
We'll probably do some type of easing into it for our 6th grade first trimester, show some grace there, because that's a big transition. But we're ready to raise the bar. So that's what we're doing. It's time. Winter, spring clubs and activities, all kinds of good stuff. Student council, speech and debate, although that's to be discussed. Art club, band and chorus, wow, we got a great band and chorus teacher. A wrestling program, middle school had its first ever female champion wrestler at,
Awesome.
yep, Jada Casio. It was not the middle school, it was the, gosh, you know so much more about wrestling than I do, team.
Was it youth or regionals?
It was the state champion where they win the jackets.
Oh, yeah, so that's a youth tournament.
But still, as far as anyone knows, she's our first female
She's a
champion.
fantastic wrestler.
Yeah.
She comes from a good family of
Oh, yeah, they're tough.
strapping young people.
Yeah. And Sawyer Lufkin, just at regionals is going to states this coming weekend.
Oh,
He
that's.
broke the record for the most.
He's not
men's
the only one though.
Going to states. No,
No.
I know another young man.
I know a couple.
Yeah, I believe he's your son.
Yeah, one
Yeah.
of them,
Good for him.
yeah, he took first at regionals,
Yep.
Sawyer Lufkin and Gunnar
Gunnar
Dalton. And we have others that are going to states that,
Yep.
that
Qualified.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, so.
Our skiing team won the, it's essentially the sportsmanship award for the second year in a row. They're the only team in the league ever to get it 2 years in a row. Yeah. Picture of our honor, the, Miss Sierra, our student council advisor, took a number of students, student council students, GT students, and other students who wanted to go to the State House for the honorary page program. Ah,
What happened?
well, so, special events, we hold our annual Veterans Day luncheon in November, that was well attended. We have our winter celebration day, we just had our March celebration day. Deergo Diversity Day happened in January. I think that I've talked a little bit about that to the curriculum committee.
Yeah.
And at the end of the year, when the ad hoc committee gives its presentation, it will be discussed, so I'll spare you now, it's late. We had our student council dance, we had our March Fun Day and a fundraiser called Duct Tape the Principal. And you can see there I am, duct taped to a wall. Our March workshop day, thank you Pam for the shout out. I thought it was a productive day. And one thing that we had that was awesome was the Region 9 Culinary Department. Our PTO pays and they cater us for lunch.
Wow.
The spread that they put on is spectacular. It was a real treat. And then not this Friday, but next Friday, we'll have our annual staff versus the unified basketball team game.
Awesome.
Coming up. And then all the typical stuff. We have our transition work starting in April, all the testing, the end of year activities. And of course, those who want to hang out in summer school will be there for them. And you know, a picture just to point out that we had perfect participation again in the Spirit Week as a district. Charlie claims it was a tie, but I still have the ball. Any questions?
Any questions? Go ahead, Bruce.
You said you wanted to raise the bar. I'm gonna back you up a few slides. Any thoughts of where you're looking at?
The first thing so right now at the middle school, on an assignment, the lowest grade you can have is a 50.
Yeah.
I'm making it now that it's the same as the high school. So it's a 0.
You give us your.
So therefore, for the student who's doing the bare minimum will be much more. That's what I see.
I just had a comment. I think you're doing a phenomenal job.
That was great.
I just want you to know that. And when I call and I have concerns, you're really fantastic about helping to address them. So I think you're doing really great.
Jen, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Two quick ones, Jay. ISS is independent
suspension.
school suspension, WFRP.
Sure, that is, it used to be called Pennacook. It's the Western Foothills.
Yeah, it's a-
Regional
I
program.
still call it Pennacook.
I
You
couldn't,
know,
I couldn't put that.
Years ago,
I'm sorry.
we had a cheat sheet for acronyms for the board.
We have to.
We did, it was terrible.
Those are only like some of my.
I know, I think I'm gonna see if I can find mine.
No, that's a good note. I shouldn't have used those.
No, but it's true, there's. Any other questions for him? Thank you, it was great.
All right,
Good job.
Thank you.
That is a big thing, yes. And you didn't say it, Jason.
So
What's
much,
that?
is there like so much a piece of tape?
Yeah, it was $1 per yard for 6 yards for 5. Earl Shore bought 3 full rolls of duct tape.
Were they able to pull out the, or were you nervous about the?
Well, what ended up happening,
I could solve the budget.
That's all that was.
what ended up happening is that they did a great job engineering the top. So the strands that were across my chest were very well supported, okay? They did not do enough on my legs. So when they pulled the stool out from under me, the initial drop completely released me from the hips down. And then I began to be pumped.
That's
And
not good.
I'm just,
Oh my God.
and Earl was there with a pair of scissors. And
Oh,
they
good.
helped me out of there.
You know,
And we
what?
live streaming for the whole school, so they can watch me be.
Well, then,
Oh.
it reminds me of that art with the banana.
Oh.
The
Right.
tape.
I'm glad you're okay.
Alrighty. Superintendent, you done?
I am, but I'm gonna say for the student representative report, just like me, he's working over tonight. He got stuck at work, so he couldn't make it here in time for the board meeting.
Okay. Policy, we're gonna meet April, what's the first board meeting night?
11, I think it is 8, 11. Let me look, I'll tell you. Sorry.
We will be discussing,
Eight.
8, we will be discussing the concussion protocol, it needs to be updated. And I went, cause you guys get into the annual index of what's required, what was discussed this year. They haven't updated graduation requirements, I went through it. So I knew the little tweaks there, but the main tweak will be the discussion of our local, what we ask for locally. Finance committee,
I believe it's Friday, April 11th at 8 AM.
April 18th.
That's cool.
And it was at 9. Was it 8 or 9?
It was.
Okay, let's be clear. It's Friday, April 18th at 9 o'clock.
Right, I know we had to do it whenever Bruce did it.
Say, if it was 11, then Mary missed my thing.
Curriculum has a meeting April.
11. I thought it was the 11th. Is it the 10th?
I want people to
Say what time.
It is the 10th.
At what time?
I hit the wrong day. That's okay.
I think we said 4:30.
4:30, okay. Buildings and grounds,
You haven't met.
negotiations,
4, not 4:30.
Monday.
4, okay, Monday,
What time?
I forgot, 4, yes, 3. No, you're going,
I'm gone.
Yeah.
Whatever you want.
2:30 p.m. I just read it.
okay, 2:30,
I have 2:30.
and then we have an April date, I forgot the date. I've got it on my calendar though.
I just said
Nothing for ad hoc, we are meeting,
I put out a survey to the members, we're gonna be meeting, I gave a couple possible dates, but it's early May.
okay, thank you, and we'll get back to that. And that covers that, could I have a motion? Second, all those in favor, thank you, good night.